About 6 years ago, I was newly single, and while I was watching YouTube, I repeatedly saw what I considered to be some of the worst dating advice. I want to talk about this and why you shouldn't follow this advice. Welcome back to my channel, Closer to Your Higher Self. On this channel, I share things that will help you to be a better version of yourself. My name is Jerome, and I've been helping people transform their lives for almost 3 decades. I hope this video finds you when you need to hear it most. If it resonates with you, please hit the like button, consider subscribing so you can see more of my content in the future, and share it with anyone you think will benefit from it. So, about 6 years ago, I was newly single. I had been in a relationship for a while, so I wanted to investigate what was going on in the world of dating. And I kept seeing this advice, which amounted to basically mistreating the other person. Saying things like, after a date, you should wait days before you call them. In other words, don't be available. Be inconsistent with communication. Another piece of advice was to say negative, mean, or insulting things that were intended to hurt their self-esteem, because apparently mistreating women makes them want you more. There's even a rhyme: treat 'em mean and keep 'em keen. And I'm speaking of this in terms of men dating women, but this concept has no gender. But imagine this: you meet a woman, you ask her out, and during the date, you say something mean about the way she's dressed. And then after the date, you wait 2 or 3 days to call and say you had a good time or ask her out again. And if the relationship should move forward, you don't always respond to calls or texts or tell her too much about your personal life. Treat 'em mean and keep 'em keen. It uses a psychological concept called intermittent reinforcement. And here's how it works. There's an experiment. They take a mouse and they put him in a box, and the mouse can press a lever and get a pellet of food. And if the mouse gets a pellet every time the lever is pressed, he kind of loses interest. However, if the mouse only gets a pellet intermittently, he becomes obsessed with getting a pellet. It just sits there repeatedly pressing the lever, hoping to get a pellet. And the mouse gets a huge shot of dopamine when he finally does get a pellet. And if you don't know, dopamine is a hormone that's released during pleasurable activities. It drives motivation. So the mouse gets addicted, not to the pellet, but to the dopamine. And humans can kind of do the same thing. Think about someone constantly looking at social media to see how many likes their posts are getting. And this occurs in the part of the brain called the limbic system. Now, both humans and mice have this limbic system. However, we have a prefrontal cortex, a part of the brain that the mouse does not have. And this part of the brain lets us make complex decisions. So, although we can be affected by this dopamine hit, we can also decide that we need to focus on more important things. We don't have to be at the mercy of dopamine. Now, some of you watching may say, but it works. Treat 'em mean and keep 'em keen. It works. And it does work, and I've seen it firsthand, but not intentionally. So I was dating a woman, and she was not very communicative. She seemed actually pretty matter-of-fact about our relationship. So finally, I had enough, and I told her we should just go our separate ways. And as a result, I wasn't really reaching out. I was moving on. And because I didn't answer the phone when she called, she kept calling more often. And eventually, I had to distance myself because it literally got to the point where she was calling me 10 or 15 times consecutively if I didn't answer the phone. It was a little scary. And I didn't do this on purpose, but you can see the shift in behavior. At first, she was matter-of-fact about us, and then she became obsessive. And I had just decided that I wasn't interested in pursuing a relationship with someone like this, and because my communication was less frequent, things got weird. And Interestingly, as I got ready to record this video, I remembered that she was almost addicted to social media, constantly looking at her phone, addicted to the dopamine from intermittent reinforcement. So the tactic works, but I'll ask you this. What kinds of people is it going to work on? Sadly, people with low self-esteem are susceptible to this kind of tactic. And if you're familiar with the concept of attachment styles, you may be dealing with someone who's got an anxious attachment style. These people have a fear of abandonment and need constant reassurance. This makes them obsess over you. And in either case, this makes for a challenging relationship. So you have to ask yourself if you want to navigate your relationships in this way. Taking advantage of the brain chemistry of people with low self-esteem, or being on a roller coaster with someone that has an anxious attachment style. Now, this channel was called Closer to Your Higher Self, so I hope that that is not your objective. And here's one thing, say you decide to use this tactic. You're pretending to be this rude, unavailable bad boy. But what happens when you want to be yourself? Or are you going to spend your life sacrificing intimacy in order to pretend to be something that you're not? In a previous video, I talked about how your frequency determines the kind of person that you attract. So if you are attracting dopamine addicted people with low self-esteem, you might want to consider changing your frequency. And I can assure you that a quality person that loves themselves is not going to wait 3 days for you to call and say you had a good time. And teasing or joking is fine from time to time. I think most of us enjoy a good sense of humor, but never anything mean or personal or intended to lower someone's self-esteem. Saying mean things that will make a person question themselves is just wrong, and I think you should hold yourself to a higher standard. Not to mention that a person that loves themselves, i.e. a quality person, is not going to accept this. If you're looking for a life partner, you should be looking for a mentally healthy, whole person that's going to focus on achieving goals with you. And I want to clear something up about this idea of being too available. I think people are confusing being available with being needy. Available is fine, needy is not. If my partner texts, I text her back as soon as I can. And if there's an emergency, I would drop whatever I'm doing to respond. However, I have a career and I have goals. I think this is one of the things that she appreciates about me. Your partner will admire you if you have goals and dreams. And that admiration only enhances your relationship. However, if you have no goals, dreams, or purpose other than texting your significant other 24/7 to tell them how beautiful they are, needing constant reassurance, not giving them space to live their lives, and it seems like your only purpose is to adore them, this comes across as needy, and it's not attractive. And I think this is where people go wrong. You should be available for your partner, but also have a life of your own. It's like needy people saw that they weren't getting very far with their needy behavior and thought, oh, maybe I should be mean. But it's just pretending. It's not going to work because eventually the other person will see through it. And quality people aren't going to accept that behavior. Instead, you should focus on being fulfilled, being the best version of yourself, and being on the correct frequency. Focus on interests, and focus on being the type of person that your ideal person wants to be with. Make sure that you and the other person share similar values, and no games. And soon you will attract the person for you without having to play mind games, just by being yourself. And then the two of you can focus on getting closer to your higher selves. Now, if you stayed to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments if you have any experience with this intermittent reinforcement. And let me know if you have any questions. I hope this video helped you, and I hope to see you next time on Closer to your higher self.